So a few weeks ago, I had a really great conversation with a group of students about Jewish mysticism. This idea that words contain enormous spiritual potential. And they love the theory that abracadabra comes from the Aramaic, meaning I create as I speak. It's kind of like that mirror of the idea of God bringing space-time into being through the power of words. Our words have power too. And like any tool that can be used to heal and to harm. Through Yom Kippur, starting last night, this morning, and stretching straight through sunset, we explore ways that we have both used and misused speech. Just a little while, we're going to recite Al-Chet together. That's this poetic recitation of 44 sins. And according to some scholars, a full quarter of those sins involve speech. Our tradition is full of teachings about the difficulty of repairing damage done by words. Here's a classic story. You may have heard this one before. In a small town, Isaac is gossiping about his neighbor, and it's causing people in the community to feel pretty darned uncomfortable. Some of the townsfolk go to Isaac, but they can't make him understand why his words are an issue here. He's not a bad person, and so he agrees to go with them to their rabbi to get a little clarity here. The rabbi listens patiently to the conversation. She gets up from her desk, and she gets a pillow from her chair, and she gives the pillow to Isaac, and she asks him to step outside with her. Once everyone's standing there in the street, she asks Isaac to tear open that pillow, and he obliges, and feathers explode everywhere. They get carried on the wind. They stick to people's hair and their clothing. The rabbi asks Isaac to collect all the feathers and put them back in the pillow. He immediately realizes it can't be done. He gets the point here. Once spoken, our words can never be fully retracted. What Isaac realizes is that what he can do is engage in the work of teshuvah, that work of making heartfelt amends, of trying to do what he can to atone to those whom he's hurt. All right. Quick show of hands. Who knew that story? Yeah, it's a good one there. Most years when I tell that story, I would now go on to some kind of explication about Isaac's experience. Because each of us needs to do teshuvah as well. That's why we are here. And gossip's often a good place to start. And yet this year, Manishtana, it's not like all other years. With political rhetoric reaching a boiling point, there's a different aspect of the story that struck me this year. That power of words. In the Talmud, the rabbis teach that words can cause real damage. In fact, they consider striking someone with words to be the direct equivalent of physical harm. And similar to that idea, the rabbis say that malicious speech, a form of lashon hara, has a wide area of fallout, that it envelops, that it corrupts those who speak it, those who are targeted by it, and even those who hear it. And in a lot of ways, that's the experience of the townspeople in that story. They tell Isaac that his words are harmful, and they even get him to go to the rabbi. Nes gadol. That's a big miracle right there. What's motivating them to act, though? I feel it's their discomfort with his gossip. They feel personally affected by what he's saying, even though they're not the ones targeted by it. In the story, those feathers go flying wide. They stick to people, and we can imagine they can brush them away, and who knows where the feathers go then. But malicious speech is far more difficult to brush away than mere gossip. You know those little burrs that you pick up in the fields at this time of year, common burdock, and it sticks to your clothes and to your pet's fur, and you get it in your hair, and it's almost impossible to pull out? That's the experience of malicious speech. It is annoying, it is uncomfortable, and after a while of irritation, it's impossible to think about just anything else except getting rid of it. And that takes us to our own situation. Quick word on what I'm about to share. There are very clear government rules regulating speech of clergy for tax-exempt organizations. I am in favor of those rules, and I intend to adhere to them. So I am not going to speak about specific politicians. Instead, I'm going to speak about us. I'm going to speak about we the people today. Following the presidential candidates' debate last month, there was a torrent of hatred unleashed against the Haitian immigrant community of Springfield, Ohio. Threats of violence were directed against the Haitian immigrant community and against local schools and even government offices. This was due to the propagation of a lie that they were eating people's cats and dogs and ducks and geese. Us. One group of people found this to be good news. Jeff Tischauer, who's a senior research analyst at the Southern Poverty Law Center, said, whether they're neo-Nazi or white nationalist, all of them were thrilled. They were in almost disbelief that they had a presidential candidate recycle and reuse the rhetoric that has been popular in these movements for decades. For me, hearing that hateful speech about the Haitian immigrants and about people's pets, it was more than uncomfortable. I literally recoiled from my screen. I had to walk away, actually, to recover my equilibrium. I felt like part of me was under assault. It was like being covered in a bucket of those sticky burrs. In spiritual terms, a couple of minutes ago, when we said, Adonai Elohechem emet, the Lord your God is truth, I felt that I was being asked to abandon truth and embrace falsehood. Much as the rabbis taught, this slander didn't only affect the speaker and the Haitian community whom it targeted, it affected me too. And this is hardly a unique experience because every single one of us has been exposed to the same kind of talk. In fact, the Talmud teaches us that on every single day, each of us will say or hear something that is potentially harmful to another person. That's part of the human condition. So the question is, how do we respond when we realize that we're absorbing malicious speech? The first thing to do when we become aware of the nature of what we're hearing is to protect ourselves from its corrosive effects. As the rabbis teach, why is it that our fingers narrow to a point, like pegs? The answer is so that if you hear something unsuitable, you can plug your ears. We're encouraged to, that's from Ketubot 5b. I'm going to put all this online, you can see the footnotes. We're encouraged to stop the flow of negative speech into our being whenever and wherever we encounter it. Then, if you've got a trusting relationship with the person who's speaking, you might consider engaging with them around what they're saying. And you know, based on your care for them, you might help them choose a different path. That's what happens in the story. That's what the townspeople are doing when they encourage Isaac to do some teshuvah by going to the rabbi. In Jewish terms, that's a form of tochacha, of loving correction. The only catch is tochacha as an art form. As Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz tells us, when giving tochacha, one must avoid public embarrassment. One must only engage with someone who will accept correction, and one must not give tochacha to someone who's unwilling to be guided. So according to our sages, when we become aware we're being exposed to malicious speech, first, try to get out of its path. And if it's from someone with whom you have a strong connection, you can try to address the situation with them, but this can be difficult or outright impossible in the age of social media, where we know that a meme can be reposted by strangers thousands of times in minutes. And we're not off the hook, even so. Because the Torah commands us, we cannot stand idly by while blood is being shed. And as we've learned from the rabbis, striking someone with words is the equivalent of shedding their blood. If we decide to act as bystanders, we become enablers. And we carry a certain responsibility then for the harm caused by allowing malicious talk to flow unimpeded. While we might not have generated that kind of speech, our inaction allows pain to spread. And often we can do this without any kind of ill intent whatsoever. How many of us sent around that meme of, sent around a meme of Trump hugging a cat and a duck to get a laugh? Or who received it and sent back a thumbs up or a smiley face because it was funny? I did. I genuinely laughed when I saw the meme. I needed to relieve some tension in these very difficult times. And yet my laughter ignored the human cost to the Haitian community in Springfield. So what is our task? Again, our tradition guides us. If we have the ability to help those who are wronged by malicious speech, we have an obligation to do so. We are called not to stand idly by when others are demonized for political ends, or really for any ends at all. One very effective way to respond to that call to care for the victims of bullying is to remember that not standing idly by can also mean to stand with. And it requires us to guard ourselves against indifference. As Elie Wiesel teaches, indifference is the friend of the enemy because it benefits the aggressor, never the victim, whose pain is magnified when he or she feels forgotten. And in denying their humanity, we betray our own. Indifference, then, is not only a sin, it's a punishment. I'm happy to share that some people chose not to be indifferent, that some people chose to stand with. People from towns adjacent to the Haitian community in Springfield have been going out of their way to visit the town, to go to ethnic restaurants, and to bring their business to local stores, and to make donations to local community centers. And you know, that worked for people who were physically close by. But what about us? How do we keep from indifference? It can take a lot of forms. We are creative people. Everyone needs to find their own way to discern how best to stand up for others. For my part, just to share, I decided to reach out to those who I knew personally who are of Haitian descent. And I shared messages of support online for some of those Haitian community groups in Springfield, especially the clergy groups. There's more I could have done. And yet it's a start. And let's remember, this isn't only about this one example. It's not only about Haitians. This holds true for any ethnic group or any group at all who's being vilified. again and again. And we learned this last night from Cynthia. The Jewish tradition teaches us to advocate for truth by standing with those who are targets of hatred and intolerance, wherever we might find it. And I will say also, we would do very well to apply this perspective to expand to our community also. Over the past few years, we've heard words that have caused pain. And there's still an ache in the hearts of many in our congregation. On this Day of Atonement, in this new year, let's do tshuva together. Let's return to our best selves by turning towards each other with tenderness and with respect. Let's recommit to speaking together with care and mindful sensitivity. Our words are powerful, both those that we've spoken and also those that we've allowed to stand uncontested. So let's ask ourselves today, and we have a wonderful, glorious span of time before us today to ask these questions. What feathers, what burrs are sticking to me? How have I been complicit in not stopping the spread of speech that I consider distasteful? How might I choose differently in this new year? How can I help bring ease to those in pain? Let's use the holy power of our words to help shape the world we want to live in. A world of justice, a world of tolerance, and a world of truth. Abracadabra! Let's create that world as we speak together. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts inspire us to embrace one another with open hearts. And through this Yom HaKippurim, through this Day of Atonement, may we be guided home to our truest selves and to our Creator with humble love. Kei mihi ratzon.